So can you tell us a little bit about Ghanaian culture and how it's changed as a result of the colonization by the British?
Of course, just as in other parts of colonized Africa, the British came to Africa and basically, in summary, made it their duty to change Ghanaian culture, religion, government, socioeconomic structure, etc., to that of the British and European structure. That influence is still felt today in modern Ghanaian popular culture.
Why did they do this?
Well, there are many theories and a lot of research on this, so I won't dive into that very much. But in general, they thought it was the right thing to do and that they were doing the right thing. God's work even, bringing light to the darkness of the continent.
Let's get back on topic. Can you tell us more about the cultural and societal changes of the time?
Yes, well, prior to 1945, when the United Gold Coast Convention, or UGCC, started to gain momentum, there was mostly British rule, and while there were native representatives in government, in actuality, government implemented there was in favor of the colonists. To mirror this, there was, in a sense, of overall British dominance over the people, and forced cultural and societal assimilation. Both the changes in government and the uprising of the people aiming for self-governance, starting around the time of the United Gold Coast Convention. While there were struggles, things took a change for the better. And after several years of battle, the Ghanaian people finally gained independence, marked by native Kwame Nkrumah taking office as president. But, like I said, even though they have independence, there's still a lot of British culture left behind.
We have to go in a little bit, but before you go, can you please give some examples of what British influence was left behind?
In big things like governmental and educational makeup, even the small things out there like boxing and soccer, European and Western sports are popular over there.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.
Global News. When you want it, where you want it, how you want it.
Now we're joined with Dr. Dramani Ashanti, expert on Ghana's art history and the many other cultural changes that occurred during and after colonization. His new book, Completing the Puzzle, Kwame Nkrumah's Journey of Putting Ghana's Culture Back Together, is in stores now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Can you tell us what you focus on in your new book?
Yes, when Ghana was known as the Gold Coast and was under control by the British, cultural progress was disrupted and many aspects destroyed. I focused my book on art and its regeneration in the country after Ghana's independence in 1857.
So we can assume that art wasn't encouraged during colonization.
Yes, mostly. During the 10-year plan, essentially a piece of legislation that highlighted areas for social development, schools were built and given a percentage of the budget, but art wasn't healthily encouraged. There were no natural artistic identity in the country. It was more common that independent artists would complete works, but there wasn't really any outlet to sell, trade, or appreciate art. As you know, art can be dangerous for the government, and the British wanted and had tight control over the people. They thought that artistic expression could spread ideas that they would view as threatening.
Kwame Nkrumah wanted to change this?
Absolutely. Of course, he couldn't do much during colonization, but after Ghana's independence, this was a priority of his. One of his main goals was to, along with the political developments, promote social development. Part of this social development meant creating a single national culture. To do this, he promoted arts of many kinds, from physical to performance, all in the effort to replant the cultural seeds that had been uprooted by the British.
Was it effective?
Eventually, many programs were created to help bring local art movements together to combine them into national art movements. One of the main programs was an annual art show organized by the Art Council of Ghana. This show would be moved to a new location each year, usually the capital of a territory different from the last. The thought behind this method was to try and link the country together, ensure that people from all over the country should visit other parts, bringing a little bit of culture.
What would be an example of traditional art from Ghana?
Art in Ghana ranged from useful things like baskets and pots to other things that were created to be visually pleasing. As art developed, some of the useful and beautiful ideas came together to combine and create some unique pieces. In the 60s, artists began sculpting and painting coffins for the dead. While this was common in certain areas at first, it spread just as the president had planned. The coffins would go with your profession. If you were a hunter during your life, maybe they would be an eagle coffin. If you were a photographer, you might lie in a giant camera coffin.
Interesting. Nkrumah's plan was successful after all.
Indeed it was. You can find many more examples of combining local cultures in Ghana, some of which I talk about in my book. As times have become more recent, European art and style has become popular, but many artists have stayed traditional.
And sometimes traditional is the way to go. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Dramani Ashanti talking about his new book, Completing the Puzzle, Kwame Nkrumah's journey of putting Ghana's culture back together. Thank you for watching. From what I hear, Ghana's education system has been making a lot of progress over the last few decades. Care to comment on this?
Of course. Well, the Ghanaian educational system has certainly made a lot of progress since the informal homeschooling that the youth would receive, or even the castle schools set up by the British colonial administration that replaced it in the 1600s. More recently, Ghana used missionary schools to educate and admittedly bring to Christianity Ghanaian children. But systems like this have gone under quite a bit of scrutiny in the 20th century. From the 1920s to the 1940s, an educationalist committee was instated, and many improvements to the education system that we now have been made. One controversy I'd like to point out that there is that there have been complaints that the educational system of northern Ghana has benefited far less than of the country started putting a modernized more of a focus on education. After Ghana received its independence, 25% of the population was literate. Might I add, number high for the colony at the time.
Daniel, for those enlightening words. And to enter a bit on the Ghanaian education system, perhaps some words from Sir Gordon Gugisberg, governor of the Gold Coast in Ghana from 1920. One of the greatest mistakes of the education in the past has been this, that it has taught to the African to become European instead of remaining African. This is entirely wrong, and the government recognizes it. In the future, our education will aim at making an African remain an African and taking interest in his own country.